Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop Fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
Hello, and welcome to the Next Reel Speakeasy on rashpixel.fm. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
Hey, everybody.
Each month on the Next Reel Speakeasy, we invite an industry guest to join us, and instead of serving up their favorite cocktails, they serve up movies that they love so that we can all talk about them. We'd like to welcome our guest to this month's show, actor, writer, director, and all-around funny guy, Craig Anderson. After appearing in several award-winning short films and the tap-dancing feature Bootmen, Craig made waves when his jackass spoof Double the Fist won the 2004 Australian Oscar for Best Television Comedy Sitcom or Sketch, beating out the more prominent comedy Kath and Kim, a victory which seems to still provide joy for Craig and his mates. Since then, Craig has continued working in all aspects of TV shows and movies, winning yet another Australian Oscar in 2015 for Best Direction in a Television Light Entertainment or Reality Series with Black Comedy, a show which is a fast-paced look at Australian culture through the comedic prism of Indigenous Australians. And when he's not busy with pursuing his PhD, Craig has also built a collection of over 10,000 films on VHS, many of them very rare. He also just directed his first feature film, Red Christmas, a horror film starring none other than friend of the show, Dee Wallace. We'd like to give a full fist welcome to Craig Anderson. Say hello to the folks, Craig.
Hello. or g'day. So,
Good day.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so I have a number of questions for you, Craig. A list of questions, and the first one is this: what's the deal with 10,000 VHS movies?
it's not Australian, I should tell you that. It's not like every Australian has 10,000 tapes. We've gotten the internet now. The tapes came from me collecting them over the years.
Is it like an accidental collection? Like you just woke up one day and you're like, God, I've got 5,000 tapes. I should keep going.
Well, like any kid, you bought stuff you like. Like I remember buying Terminator 2 on video, and then some sword and sorcery stuff was exciting. So I only had about 20. But then in 2001, DVD started to take over. So VHS became $1 to buy.
Yeah.
And I just remember walking around a video store looking at comedy titles, and they were like nuts, like lots of Sex Academy, ridiculous comedy films. So I started buying them for fun and just kept doing that for about 10 years.
I think that's why we all started buying the Sex Academy videos, Greg.
No, I bought it for the cover, not for the content. I just thought it was funny painting, ridiculous. I remember The Joy of Sex, and Christopher Lloyd is painted on the cover with antlers, I think. And I thought, what the hell is this? And everyone laughed at it, so I kept buying those types of tapes.
Like Up the Creek with the raft that's shaped like a woman. Yep.
There's a lot of greats. And in Australia, we didn't adapt your post. We didn't have to put them directly onto our covers. People would paint new posters. So we've got a whole bunch of different artwork. It's not like
really
ridiculous
cool.
like the Nigerian posters or the Polish,
right, those crazy
constructionalist stuff. It's just a different idea. Someone's just watched one of the horror films and gone, maybe this, and just painted a whole new, what would be a legitimate poster. So yeah, it's very exciting just when you're not from Australia, to walk around and look at the videos and see different covers.
They don't rename the movies, though, do they? Like they do in...
Oh, we still do, yeah.
You rename the movies? Like they do when they do international translations. It's one of our favorite kind of adopted games is we get these, Sweden and they write in and like, hey, the movie you just did this week is called something absolutely ridiculous in our country when you translate it into our language and back. So
yeah, we do that every time. I post on Instagram one video a day.
Yeah.
And I reckon 50% I have to spend a lot of time searching. They're also not, they're quite unknown films or rare films.
Right.
Because the ones I collect, I try and find things that you can't get on DVD or digitally anyway. So they take a little bit of searching, but most of the time it's because we've changed the name.
That's awesome.
And they're not great changes. They're just ridiculous. They're just like...
They're silly changes.
Yeah.
If you had to pick your very favorite of your vast collection, what would be at the very top? The thing that occupies that prima place, the most honored position in your collection, you're most proud of?
I have... I was about to say fetish, but this is not good. Actually, I can't get out of this now. Okay. Yeah. I like tapes called Special Interest. So if you went to the video store or Blockbuster, you would see a section called Special Interest. That's what we had in Australia. But that's where they had the how-tos, the weird sports tapes, the foxy boxing, documentaries, war documentaries. So that section had lots of ridiculous things. So I like to collect that, and I've got about 800 of these. They're pretty much YouTube before YouTube existed. The best one is... I don't know if you've heard of a weird comedian called Rolf Harris, an Australian bearded guy. He's a nut. He does I think called the wobble board, where he shakes it like a piece of metal and it wobbles, and that's part of his music. But he was big in England, but recently he's come out, he's been arrested for being a weird sexually, a molester of adults and sometimes teenage girls. But he made a tape in 1985 called Kids Can Say No. So it's like this horribly, deeply ironic film where he's saying don't molest kids and talking to kids about how to not get molested. And it's really weird.
That's dark.
Some British people have told me that there's a whole slew of these famous British entertainers getting busted and Jimmy Savile is the most famous of those.
Yeah.
And they said the cops probably found out and made him do that video.
Oh,
but
it's
then
like
kept
part
it
of
on
his...
the lowdown as
Okay.
part of his thing. Yeah, so he
Right.
didn't get prosecuted, but someone put pressure on him to go, you better make sure you look like you're on the right side of this.
Yeah.
So he's made this
Wow.
20-minute documentary.
That is super grim. That is some gallows collecting right there.
Yeah, I shouldn't have opened with I collect it for comedy purposes.
Yeah, right. No, you took that.
I
the wrong
also
direction.
anthropological as well. So yeah.
Well,
Do you remember what the first VHS was that you had?
I remember saving a lot of money when I was a kid to buy Grandpa's sci-fi classics, and that's Grandpa Munster, Al Lewis.
Oh yeah, really?
He
Sure.
did this weird series in the late 70s, early 80s, 3 tapes where he just used public domain clips for horror movies, like trailers for horror movies, sci-fi movies, and the other one is called Grandpa's Silly Scaries, where he just goes, oh, and does his weird banter and introduces trailers. And that's it. So he was kind of trying to pitch himself as an Elvira, but just came off as crazy.
Oh,
sad.
right.
Yeah. But I was excited
funny.
by that when I was a kid and bought those at the local chemist. Yeah.
Okay. I have
That is
to change gears.
fantastic.
I need you to weigh in. This is like an Australian judge's ruling.
Well, this
okay.
came up. Well, do we want to say why it came up?
Yes,
Pete?
because last week we have a friend of the show, a listener, Nick Langdon, also an Australian. He writes in and he says, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that on this, whether or not the Australian audiences for movies are extroverted or introverted, because when we go to movies, occasionally we go to big movies and people start screaming like crazy. They, they'll go, when the big star comes on, they'll start screaming and say, "Woo, yeah!" And of course, it's a cold, dead screen. It's really just light bouncing off of a screen, and yet we, for some reason, forget that and think they're actually listening. Like Harrison Ford is there listening to us scream in excitement that he's back on the Millennium Falcon. And he wrote it saying, "I think I'm going to the wrong screenings, or else Australian audiences must be much more introverted than you are." And I said, that's bananas. All the Australians I know are incredibly extroverted people. You're telling me they don't scream at stuff? Now, then I go watch your entire catalog of Craig Anderson is an extrovert, might as well be the subtitle.
Yes.
Could you please weigh in on this? Am I crazy, or are Australians really introverted moviegoers?
We are introverted at the
Really?
cinema. Yeah. I didn't realize until I went to America. And I was in LA at the Grove, and I was watching a horror film. And it was people were talking as if it was interactive.
Yes.
Like talking
That's
at the
so
screen
funny.
and amongst themselves and going, which I love. I thought it was great. But in Australia, I think we've inherited the British way of viewing. You have to sit very quietly and not
You don't
talk.
say anything.
Oh, not at all. No. And it's weird.
Nick, his exact phrase was, "We inherited." I'm not kidding. We inherited the British stoicism. He said.
Yes.
I was in Korea at a movie. It was the first time that A New Hope had reopened, and I was living in Korea at the time. I was sitting in the theater, and I was sitting next to. I'm an American. I'm a hairy guy. I got a lot of hair on my arms.
Okay.
I got hair all over. And the theater goes dark, and all of a sudden I feel somebody's petting me on my arm, and I look over, and there's this guy, he's about 25-year-old Korean guy, and he is petting my arm, and he looks at me and he kind of smiles, and he says in Korean, he says, "Harry."
What the
Yeah.
Why?
No, that's it. Because
They're very touchy.
They're very touchy.
Touchy-feely.
They had no problem. Speaking of making gross generalizations about our audience, I feel like having lived there long enough, I could make some of those. They were really surprised by the amount of hair on my arm, and they had to touch it at all times.
Okay.
Yeah,
But that's
Anyway,
not a normal cinema activity.
Is just to pet your neighbor.
Yeah.
No, it's apparently not a normal
Okay.
thing. I was just the benefactor there. Anyway, none of that is why we are here tonight. Andy, please find the rails.
Yes. So we are here tonight because we asked you to be on the show and talk about one of your favorite movies. You gave us several, and the one that we thought would be fun to talk about is a film that I think I think I can say this, Pete. Neither of us had actually heard of this film.
That is true.
It is a film from 1978, a bank heist thriller called The Silent Partner.
Yes.
And so Craig, tell us why you picked this film. Why is this one of the films that you love?
Oh, brother. I watched it again and realized, it's probably not one of my favorites. But the exciting thing is, having a VHS collection, I don't go to any websites that say, these are great films, you should see these films. I just walk around like it's a video store and pick one up and put it on. And I've seen some excellent films that way, like John Frankenheimer films from the 60s, and just gone, whoa, these are awesome. And lots of weird 70s alternative films and 80s films. I found this one in the same way. It's released in Australia on Star Video. It's not an ad. They've been, closed for 20 years, that company. But on the cover is Santa Claus with a gun in the middle of the stick-up. And I went, whoa, this is exciting. Put it on and watched the whole film and was really surprised and excited and thought there were some interesting choices in the film. Yeah, and Elliot Gould, who I really like.
I actually really ended up enjoying this film. I was really glad that I got to see it, especially not having ever, like I said, and not ever having even heard of it before. It's a nicely plotted thriller, and I like the way they do this. It definitely, I thought, had a real 70s vibe. Like, you had a lot of those sort of conspiracy thrillers, a lot of darker stories and everything in the 70s. I thought it fit that kind of tone nicely. You've got this bank teller who gets this hint that there's going to be a robbery and kind of comes up with this plan to steal a bunch of money himself and make everybody think that the robber took it all. And I liked that. I mean, I really liked Elliot Gould in this, and I liked that there's this side of him it's like he's this kind of this immoral character who's just like, he's okay with this whole idea of just stealing the bank's money.
It reminds me of kind of like Fargo, or where the hero is made a mistake but has to deal with it, or was overstretching what they should be doing, and they end up having to deal with it.
I think that's one of the things I like so much. And it was a surprise seeing Elliot Gould in this part, because I am used to him playing a guy who is generally funnier.
Oh, right.
And so I think it was just very strange seeing him this young and this sort of sober of a character. It falls into this category of films that I really adore, which is these kind of guys of a certain age trying to find their kind of place in the universe, right? He's already sort of beaten down, like he likes this woman, but finds out that, oh my goodness, she's actually, she's having an affair, or his boss is having an affair on his boss's wife with her. So he's lost his chance with this woman. He doesn't really have much of a chance with her. He's just kind of awkward, and yet gets wrapped up in this crazy scheme, and ends up being kind of making choices that are not good guy choices. I just love that. Like, this is generally not this is not a positive message movie.
Like, right? Would he have thought that he was going to be burying a body at the bottom of a building when this whole thing started?
Of a woman he was sleeping with,
right?
Like, he was having a good relationship, well, an okay relationship. He enjoyed her company, and then he's burying her. He went through a lot in that film, but it's also like one of those like Sam Peckinpah, like Straw Dogs, where the guy has to find his masculinity or become evil, so to speak.
That's a thing, and I was hesitant because I usually use this call this like the men of a certain age finding their power in the world, but this is not a good message for that language, because his power is to like dominate and clean up bodies and like figure out how to steal a bunch of money from a bank, and so not a role model, kids, but
he still is looking for a better life.
Yes,
it still does that thing of you can be normal or you can attempt to move away from your normal life and have better, head to an island and live happily.
So let's talk just a bit about Curtis Hanson. He, as the screenwriter, we know Curtis Hanson. We love Curtis Hanson. We've seen some other Curtis Hanson films more recent. This was an early script from Curtis Hanson. What do you think about just generally the way the script was put together and the way the film was paced, and in terms of just the straight up writing of it?
I love the way they introduce the robbery, the way that this is going to play out. It's Elliot. It's just tons of looking. And it reminds me a lot of the conversation, the beginning of the conversation, in that he's at the teller. He can look at the Santa Claus working on the next level, and he's just slowly piecing everything together, including the handwriting. And that's like a big thing throughout, is that he's worked out that the Santa Claus, who's got like a charity sign, has written the letter G or C in the same way that someone's written on a bank slip that they're going to rob the bank, I have a gun. And it's just great because he's just slowly piecing everything together. And there's no moment where he has to explain the exposition. It's just all shown to you. It's a great example of that, in that you're watching it. It's Elliot Gould. You're still engaged. There's some good subplots in the space with John Candy. I think that's like his first film appearance, and he's great. That's like a sad little storyline moving along there, and that's just happening around him whilst he's watching, and we're seeing the Santa character watch him, and there's the exposition just happens, and then before you know it, you realize he's come away better than the villain, and that's done without words, which is great.
I think it's just, he only really has one line about the whole thing where he's just like, have you ever seen a Santa that doesn't like kids? I think that's like the only thing that he really says, and everything else is just him watching and noticing. And I loved how perceptive he was as a character, and how he keeps kind of, he catches this Santa time and time again, just these subtle little hints that really kind of help him put this whole thing together. And I loved how effective that was in the screenplay without having to spell it out so much.
And that, as you said, people around him refer to him as a good worker, and he's observant and stuff, but no one has to shoehorn it in or make it really gross. Like, no one says, man, you're really observant at things happening outside in the mall, because that would be really lame. But there's enough going on where he's a really good worker. He's sort of a social reject compared to the other cool people in the bank, and you can tell it's because he cares more about work and doing the right thing, and it sort of lines up with the way that, well, he can be observant enough to see this happening.
This is it's one of the things I actually found myself connecting some dots with around Curtis Hanson. We've done L.A. Confidential on the show, and we've talked about Never Cry Wolf. I think Andy, you haven't seen it yet, right?
Yeah,
that one's still on your list. It was fascinating to watch this film, and in light of the expediency of exposition, like you say, I think that is such a trait of his economy of screenwriting, Curtis Hanson. I think he has, watching this film, it's really cool to see where that comes from, because it's something you could make exactly the same observations around LA Confidential, which I think is one of his just pinnacles of his work. It's just terrific. And so it was really fun to see. I was really surprised that I had never even heard of this film, and to find out that he wrote it was a real treat. And
we should say that at least, I mean, it was an adaptation of a Danish book and film by Anders Bodilsen, a story called Think of a Number from 1969. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he was working off of that, but I still think that, he was able to really just, I mean, I didn't look into the film from Denmark about how well that did or what people thought of it, but I feel like he really did a really effective job of streamlining this story. It was very taut. It was just very, the plot just moved nicely. It didn't feel like there was a lot of extra fluff all through it.
That was, I think the same thing could be said, though. I mean, you want to see a movie with an expedient screenplay. I swear the Never Cry Wolf screenplay must be like 8 pages long. Like it is, it really is an effectively written piece in that same regard. And also working off a book, LA Confidential working off a book. I don't think either of those, obviously he had no film to work from, but
in regards to that expediency, and not having fluff around it.
Yeah.
The fluff, well, the stuff that isn't just pure robbery is to do with marital and having affairs and cheating and stuff, which is great because it has the theme of transgression. And like in a horror movie, the setup has a lot of someone's... I just watched also on VHS, Peter Weller in a film, what's it called, where rats are in the apartment and they're just eating through the apartment. It's insane. It becomes Peter Weller versus rats. And it all comes from the fact that he has a the secretary that he kind of loves, but he also is married and the wife has gone away, and it's kind of plaguing him at work. And then he goes home and just can't find this damn rat. And it's 90 minutes where he's fighting a giant rat and ripping his house apart and going crazy. But it does the horror thing, which is there's transgression usually to do with having love and cheating on people. And so in The Silent Partner, in this film, there's a whole bunch of transgression going on around him. In fact, a lot of it reminded me of The Apartment, the Jack Lemmon film, where he has to help his bosses cheat on their partners and destroy their own families in private, you know. So I felt like Elliot Gould was given that job in this film a fair bit, and it made him angry and want to have to change his life because he had to help his boss cheat on someone.
That's really true. And even the B story, like even John Candy's story about, you know, that ends up also being about just this kind of weird kind of traitorous betrayal relationship,
right.
You know.
Love it and
here's hope. We're going to take this little bubble of hope and right in front of you, we're going to pop it.
It's so sad because it happens almost in the background.
Yes.
Like there's just a few lines, you see them, there's no dialogue about it. He's cracking onto a girl. And then there's another bloke come up to him in a classic weird misogynist 70s thing and going, she's all right. Oh, look at the rack on her or something like that. And then later on, she's just in a bathroom. Elliot Gould goes to the bathroom and walks in at a party and she's with someone else. And the only other beat of that story is he's at the wedding of John Candy and her. And it's like, oh my God, piecing those three things together, John Candy's going to be screwed over forever.
It's awful. Yeah. It's awful. Yeah. I mean, it's not like almost in the back. In some cases, it's literally happening in the background at the party. Yes. Like it is literally in the background of other action. You are watching him and his future spouse being sort of torn asunder, and he doesn't even know it. It's the saddest thing.
He's sleeping in the chair downstairs at the party.
Yeah. That's right. That is one of the greatest little gifts of this movie. I thought that was great. Is the movie that Peter Weller, just for our notes, since you brought it up, I now have to see it. Is it Of Unknown Origin? It looks like that's the one. 1983. All right, it's on the list.
Yep.
Peter Weller versus the Rats.
There's a lot of great cinematography in that.
It's a really interesting idea though that you brought up, because then it's like the whole idea of the crime throughout this story and how everybody is really guilty of crime in some way in this story. They're all, committing infidelity. His crime that he's committing is just a little higher up than some of these other crimes. Although, all in all, they're all doing something that's pretty bad. But it also speaks to the title, which I think is interesting, The Silent Partner, and we're talking about relationships here. And I mean, he's kind of if you could look at it this way, the unfaithful one in this relationship with Christopher Plummer,
Well, I guess in a way, he's doing what he should have done to his boss. Like, used that information to get with the person who she kind of likes him. He's not like some sort of rapist. He likes the woman that the boss is with, and she kind of likes him back. But she's just like, well, too bad, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. So what he could have done is worked on that problem. But instead, he does the exact same, what he should have done there with the bank robber, where he goes, I've seen you transgress, I'm going to help you, and then steal everything from you because you can't say anything because you're a bad guy. But that's the crux of the film. I don't know if we've actually explained what this film is about. It's really about the villain.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and give us the background as you see it?
Elliot Gould works at a bank. He's a bit of a loser. He doesn't have the life he wants. He realizes that. He continues to work. He uncovers a plot that someone's going to rob the bank. And just before that happens, he splits the money that's in his till and puts it in his lunchbox and takes it home. And so the guy who robs the bank is pinned up with a lot of money. So Elliot Gould, being the teller, can say, well, the guy stole $40,000. And everyone goes, yeah, that's terrible. And it goes on the news, and he's kind of a celebrity because he was there when it happened. But then the bad guy who's gotten away is mega angry and starts calling him and finds out who he is, calls him from across the road. And there's just great sequences where there's a telephone booth, which I really miss in movies because you don't have mobile phones where people are in different parts of the town. This guy stands across the road on his phone looking up at Elliot Gould's apartment, and there's just tons of interaction between them where he's going to come and take the money. He wants the money, but Elliot Gould has hidden it somewhere. Well, he puts it back in the bank in a safety deposit box.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, and then the bad guy wants to go, rips apart his apartment trying to find the key or work out where the money is. But then one day his cleaner throws it out in the trash. And now he's got this other awesome problem in that the money he's stolen is in the bank that he works in and has stolen it from, and he needs to work out how to get that back out.
The relationship, I love that you bring up the Christopher Plummer and the phone booth because it's really terrific. It seems like Christopher Plummer's role in this, or maybe why he took the role in particular, is because of all the great costume changes he gets. He goes from Santa Claus in the beginning to a woman at the end, and I'm telling you, he's a passable woman at the end of this thing.
It's great. He also has I don't know if it's a Christopher Plummer trait, but dark eyeliner at some point before he dresses as a woman.
Yes.
Yeah. And I read online that just on message boards, people are saying, hang on, is his character meant to be gay? Which makes no sense. But I should say, there's a rough moment, and it's a 70s roughness where it's like, whoa, that violence is too much. When he's upset that the bank robbery didn't work, the next time we see him, he's at a club or a sports center or a bar or something, and there's a girl who likes him. And it's weird because it's Christopher Plummer, and he's kind of an older man, and she's a really young girl, and she comes up and she tries to get with him, and he kisses her back, but then I think he slaps her, and then she falls to the ground, and then he puts his foot on her face and pushes her head down, and the next thing is a cut where there's a whole bunch of men standing at the doorway going, oh, you've gone too far this time. It's kind of showing that this, who was a clown, I guess, because we saw him dressed as Santa Claus, and he kind of failed the first time he wanted to rob the bank, and then the second time he did do it, but he didn't get his money. So I guess he looks like a low-status guy. And at some point they've gone, well, we need to make him look really tough. So it's just this scene where he beats up a woman.
Well, actually, you're right. It's a really grim sequence, but I found that sequence to be particularly rewarding in unraveling who this character is. And back to that expediency of screenwriting, that one line, "You've gone too far this time," allows us to uncover a world of this character, right? A whole world of who he is and what he does, and transform him in our eyes. He's no longer a clown. He's somebody to be taken seriously.
Yeah, that's true. He's definitely off the chain at that point. And then he is menacing, and we know how far he can go. Maybe it's just the way I read it, but I didn't work out till afterwards that he must have been angry, and that's why he did that. Because he was so staring off into the distance type of guy, and then he just snaps and does that, and it's like, well, where did that come from? And then I work out, because the next scene he's calling him going, I know who you are now. And it becomes very clear that he's nuts. But when I saw it, I found it a little abrasive, like, whoa, that came from nowhere.
But speaking to the violence, I was really, it was, maybe it's just the 70s-ness of the film, but aside from that club scene, then you have the scene where he beheads the girl.
That was shocking.
Did that kind of come out of left field? I wasn't expecting it at all. Although it fit really well with his character and with just the violent tendencies that he had. But I was really not expecting that to happen, and especially just like to hold on it so much as he's like grinding her throat across the piece of glass. It really shocked me, and it was interesting that they kind of took it to that level in this film.
That was amazing. And then he leaves her head in the aquarium.
That was
like, he's not just killing her, he's literally taking her head off to make a point. Again, it's the love. He was with that woman and in jail, so that woman was seeing Elliot Gould and it has transgressed. And then he's almost punishing her. Like, this film kind of says the moment you do something wrong, you're a criminal in no matter what respect, and you could die. You're not worth anything. You're not in a moral world.
Yeah, that's an interesting worldview of the film, that there is no safety. As long as we've gone ahead and moved the goalpost of morality south as far as we have, then it doesn't matter, who you are. You're going to lose your head one way or the other. Although in the end, they get away with the money.
To me, it felt kind of part of that 70s vibe. It has this we're beating the system. Like the system itself has corruption in it, and we are criminals ourselves, but at the same time, we are, getting away from the system, and we're kind of going to create a new life. So I don't know. It definitely kind of had kind of a darker 70s vibe. The fact that that he gets away with as much as he does, and then Julie finds out, everything that Miles has done, and kind of is just like, yeah, it's okay because I've been wanting to escape and create a new life for myself too. So let's go for it. It's pretty interesting. I mean, it's thrilling to see them get away with it, and then you think about it, it's like, gosh, they're I guess they're not good people.
They're not good people, and the whole film is left with this giant sort of black hole void of trust. How could they possibly go off and live any sort of authentic relationship with one another after what they've been through?
And she's been screwed over by him so much.
Right.
He's such a nut to her.
He was nuts.
That hot cold game he's playing the whole time. It's just, I'm surprised she ended up with him at all. I mean, geez.
This is Susanna York. We're talking about here. She plays Julie Carver at the bank,
but she calls him on it every morning after he's rejected her. She has to say something again, and it makes it very clear to the audience that she's being screwed around.
I kept trying to figure out what do they want me to think of her, right? Because that she's having the affair is sort of one thing, right? But that she's doing it so intentionally and so overtly, and clearly the physical subtext of the relationship between Susanna York and the boss's wife when they meet at their holiday party is such that everybody knows this is going on. And as soon as that becomes the level of awareness that we have on screen, that everybody knows this is a relationship of infidelity, as much as I wanted to even find myself with some affinity towards Susanna York, I didn't even have that. Like she ends up losing integrity in the film, and I wanted to like her.
I mean, I do kind of like her, but it to me, she kind of came off as that sort of character that she really was kind of a broken woman who was stuck in these relationships that really she could never win with, She had the boss that was always just, I mean, he had a wife. I mean, so that kind of says everything about where she's going to get in that relationship. She never really spoke like she was hoping that one day he would divorce her and all that. It just seemed like she was just the other woman, and that's how things were. And she didn't seem to have too much of a problem with that. And even with him, just kind of that whole hot, cold game that he was always playing with her, it's almost seemed like that kept her, she seemed more interested the more he played, or she seemed okay to keep coming back to it, I guess. And that to me kind of just spoke of how broken a woman she was, that she couldn't be in a solid relationship with somebody who was just always going to be there for her.
This was the same year that she played Superman's mom.
Yes.
And she's terrific, and even though she's not my best friend, Celine Lomez plays Elaine. She is the poor woman who leaves her head in a fish tank. She was one of the finalists in casting for Charlie's Angels, but lost out to Tanya Roberts because they said she was too sexy for prime time. So if you're going to be known for something, that's the reputation you probably. That's okay. I thought she was a great character. She was stuck in between the two because of Gould and Plummer, because she was actually dating or she was actually cozying up to Elliot Gould because she was working for Christopher Plummer and was with him. And she ended up. It's when she ends up sort of changing sides that Plummer loses his cool with her.
And she does that great moment in the bank where she starts. Elliot Gould's worked out she's the best way to. She's going to come in and pretend she owns the safety deposit box and help get it unlocked. And then when she gets it given to her after they've had a locksmith in there for 2 hours, she opens it up and starts to pull the money out and put it in her handbag in front of Elliot. And he walks over and he has to, because he's pretending to work at the bank and there's another bank employee in there. So he has to come over and go, no, and whisper to her, we've agreed, you're not taking this. And there's an excellent moment. It just speaks to how you can't trust anyone in this film. In that she could screw him, she's still not completely on board, but then she puts it back. So it's just a lot of moments where we're shown a character's given a choice. to betray someone or to stick with them, like in most scenes.
It totally, and it really is beautiful too because of Gould's response. That was one of the first times that we look at him and he puts his hand on her in an unnaturally physical fashion. That's the first time that we get to see, in my view, it's the first time we see him as not just calculating, but dominating it physically in a way that is somehow threatening. And I thought that was really interesting, the way that sort of played out in the sort of the physicality of the sequence.
The other great scene between the two of them was when he kind of realizes that she's working with Harry and is kind of okay with it, and they have this amazing scene where they're kind of talking about it in bed. And it's just like they kind of acknowledge the whole thing is there, and they kind of go along with it. It's almost like this thing they decide, you know what? We like each other enough to just kind of keep exploring this and see where the whole thing ends up. And maybe it'll be okay, maybe it won't, but we're not going to worry about it right now because we're just going to screw.
It's the 70s.
It's right, exactly. I loved it.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific. The other two great characters as we bust through the cast here, Michael Kirby plays Charles Packard. He is, I think, remembered for, in this film, for me, nothing more than, hey, could you babysit my mistress for a few hours? What?
Yeah. How do you ask somebody that? Like, that's just it seems so awkward.
That takes such, nerve. The nerve. I just it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. And the other is Sean Sullivan, who plays Frank the bank guard. Talk about familiar faces cropping up in this film. Saw him, Sean Sullivan, in 2001 and The Dead Zone, and he's got a lot of credits to his name. Just a very familiar face, and possibly the only friendly character in this film. The only character who walks away, I think, unscathed by the amorality or the immorality of the film. I don't think he ends up doing anything, that smacks of infidelity.
No,
the
he's
bank
stoic.
guard.
He has to.
He's just the bank guard.
Almost the old system, because he ends up shooting the bad guy to death.
Yeah. Yep. Again and again and again.
Yeah.
So anyhow, any other characters that jump out to you in the cast that we haven't talked about?
Just in the setup of John Candy's girlfriend, who becomes wife, she wears a bunch of T-shirts like it's a teen comedy. Right. One of them is "Bankers do it with interest," and another one is "Penalties for early withdrawal." I don't know why she's wearing these in a bank. Like everyone else is. It's like Dog Day Afternoon. Everyone is dressed quite appropriately to work in a bank, but she's wearing these T-shirts. It's almost like clever production design, because they didn't write her as, they didn't have to show scenes where she's sexually active with lots of people until they pull it off. Like
until they do, yeah.
Yeah. But to set her up when she's flirting with John Candy, she's wearing these T-shirts that show that she's nuts, or like she's in a weird softcore teen comedy.
That's what makes it so funny too, is the fact that they don't ever mention it, and no one else in these bank sequences looks at her askance at all. Like, it is totally normal for her to be wearing these absolutely categorically inappropriate T-shirts. Brilliant.
Yeah, those are like banker T-shirts that you see somebody like joke selling on Facebook. You just
that's right. It's like she got them at the holiday party and never took them off.
Right.
It was brilliant.
I also
brilliant.
really like, I don't know what it is, but the shopping mall. I don't know if that's a weird thing to like, but films set in shopping malls I really like. And this is at the period of Dawn of the Dead, which is another of my favorite films.
Oh, yeah.
Where I look at the shopping center in this and just, I don't know, I get excited. I like the design of it.
Well, I love that. I love that they actually bring it into the story a little bit too. Like the final shootout kind of they bring it out of there, and the whole thing on the escalators and everything. I just loved that.
Oh,
I mean, because escalators are not comfortable. I just see him falling on the escalators. I'm like, oh man, that just hurts.
Did you get sidetracked at all? I totally came out of the film experience at the end when he hit the bottom of the escalator and he's dead. And I'm thinking about the actor getting the stairs pushed under his skin, like getting pinched.
Right. Oh, I know.
That was the worst.
I never
watching
came out
him
of it.
fall.
I loved it. I think that's excellent.
Oh well, I have
you know.
a great fear of escalators, so it's probably me. A great fear. It's very
You're that guy
subversive.
who has to like jump over that last
Yeah.
step onto the thing just to make sure you don't get sucked in.
You sure they don't have a fireman's pole anywhere? I would take that over an escalator any day. Anyway,
It reminds me of the end of the Charlton Heston film, The Omega Man, where he plays the sole survivor. I mean, they remade it.
Yeah.
What was it? I Am Legend.
Oh yeah, that's
Will
that's
Smith.
the I Am Legend story. Right?
It used to be Charlton Heston, and it was that great thing of the 70s where a white man hates new things, and and that was a sci-fi, and they was zombie vampire thing, but it I think on a meta level, it's about things are changing, women are getting to do things minorities are doing. I hate this, and the fights against it, and at the end he ends up lying in a fountain sprawled out like Jesus, and his blood is provides the cure for everyone. It just reminded me, I don't know why, but Christopher Plummer lying at the bottom of the escalator, dressed as a woman, desperate to have a better life, and turning himself into a clown to try and defeat the world that's changing. Just lying there, almost like that shot in Omega Man that's like Christ-like. It just, I don't know, resonates a lot with me. I like that look of it.
What did you think about Daryl Duke's direction on this? Because I mean, he's mostly a TV director, but it didn't feel TV to me. What do you guys think?
I was surprised that he hadn't done more. I was very excited about the direction, everything about it.
It looks like he only did like four films or so. Everything else was TV, like Thornbirds. I mean, he did like long form TV in addition to like TV shows and stuff. But I mean, seeing that his previous film Payday, Roger Ebert said was superb. So it sounds like he could have made a bigger career of directing features. I thought he did a great job here.
Well, this is set in Toronto, and it was made. Canada and Australia had a similar thing where we, in the 70s, started to let tax breaks happen for films. So there were a lot of awesome films, but at the time they weren't received well because they were just considered exploitation and not proper dramatic films. And history tells, look, those films were awesome. And the stuff we make now that we try and get into film festivals, no one cares about and history won't care about. But I think he might have suffered from the same thing a lot of Aussie directors have suffered from of that period, in that if they did have some skills, working in genres was a disadvantage, because as we moved away from allowing tax breaks and making films very cheap to make, they became really artistic and highbrow, and that's when they stopped letting these types of directors direct, which is probably why this guy ended up having to do TV and not keep making films.
And the fact that the pinnacle of his career is the Thornbirds.
Yeah.
Emphasis on pinnacle.
My mum loves the Thornbirds.
We've just insulted all three of our mothers, I'm sure. Sorry, Mum. But yeah, it is a really, I think it is a really tight and a tight film, and it really makes good on the script. And I think, you already mentioned the cinematography. I mean, Billy Williams does the cinematography, and in general, I felt like weirdly, your excitement about the mall, I think his cinematography showcases the mall and how interesting the mall was in the 70s, right? Yes. I mean, because this was like the heyday for malls, the 70s and 80s. Like, this is when malls were awesome. And
they weren't prefabricated like being on a cruise ship. They were just building a big building with lots of mini buildings and spaces that had their own personality smashed in together, which is great. And there's that line in Dawn of the Dead when they're flying over for the first time and they look down at the supermarket, the shopping center, and they say, "What is it?" And that always resonates with me because I've grown up since malls have existed, so I'm always going to them like that's what they are. But there's that moment in Dawn of the Dead where they have to talk about it's one of those new
have to explain it,
right? Yeah, and this is what we're going to spend our time in, and it's weird.
Isn't it fascinating that we of our generation have existed for the entire life cycle of the mall. That now we're in an era where we used to like hang out at the mall for fun, and now we're going to shoot malls that have been abandoned and are lying destitute. At least we have those all over the place now. Malls that are
well, you're in hippie Portland though.
Oh, why you gotta hate? You know your spirit is here. You know your heart is here.
It is. You're right.
In Australia, in the areas I live, the malls have been rebuilt as bigger, better. So there's just old, dead malls because they weren't good enough.
Yeah,
right.
So they're just
they're
now
still
they're
growing.
now they're casinos.
Yeah.
Practically. They have fun parks inside the malls
Yeah,
now.
right,
I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. No, it's pretty nutty. Speaking of more of the cinematography, though, I mean, I loved some of the shots that they got. Like, there's a scene where Elliot Gould is inside the safety deposit box room, and you've got all those jail bars like in front of him, and they used some of those locations inside the bank really to a great effect, just to kind of give these little subtextual nods of kind of this place that these people were in and this world of crime that they are all finding themselves in. And also, I loved the shot of Christopher Plummer's eyes when you've got that mail slot, when he just opens the mail slot.
Yes. Yeah.
I've never seen somebody's eyes through a mail slot look so intense and terrifying. I mean, he really looked like he could have just killed Elliot Gould with his eyes in that shot.
Can I just say, Christopher Plummer really brings it in this film. Like, he's excellent. He's very charming, but before charming, he's malvoyant, he's hideous, he's scary before he becomes charming. And I just watched a film also on VHS called Villain, where Richard Burton plays a bad guy, and it's fantastic. Like, Ian McShane's in it, and he's very young, and he looks like a mod, because I think it was 1971 maybe, and Richard Burton is playing this really, it's based on the twins, the Cray twins that Tom Hardy just played.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But it's based on the gay twin. So Richard Burton is playing this villain who has like a bevy of boys underneath him. The main one is Ian McShane, who he uses sexuality as well as just heavy-handedness to control his gang and get what he wants. And it's really awesome and scary. But apparently Richard Burton was maligned for doing this. And it was kind of the end of his big roles in film because he chose to do this. But Christopher Plummer's performance in this reminds me of that kind of intensity where in the 60s they were doing big, bright blockbusters and ridiculous, fun things. And now they've gone, screw it. I want to prove that I'm tough, that I'm hard, and I'm a good actor. And he's come out and done it, I reckon.
With an incredible variety, and we're going to showcase it in Taking Down the System, which now we have this whole cultural awareness of the 70s that we hate systems and organized governments, and this is our metaphor for taking them down. I'm looking at the poster for Villain right now. I love it. Meet Vic Dyken is a tagline, then wish you hadn't. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes. That's great.
I love movie
It's a very good film. It's Yeah, I'm surprised it's not more spoken of, Villain. It's definitely worth a watch.
Music is Oscar Peterson. How well did you feel like the score supported the film?
Oscar Peterson, he is an amazing jazz pianist. They call him the Maharaja of the keyboard. And I really enjoyed the theme for this. I don't know if he did all of the music or just kind of the main theme, but I enjoyed the theme. I thought the music fit really nicely. And I got to say, this sent me on kind of this Oscar Peterson spiral. I ended up buying a whole bunch of his albums. Just kind of became an overnight Oscar Peterson fan from this film, which I wasn't expecting.
I don't know what happened. I can't remember a single piece of music from this film. So it fit very well. As you've asked me, I've gone,
I guess it did its job.
I'll tell you why as well. Because it's set at Christmas, I've just made a horror film about Christmas.
Yeah,
and
right.
Black Christmas, the 1974 Canadian horror film, is full of Christmas tunes throughout, and it uses carols to do that. So I was probably obsessed with the background music in the mall in this film, in Silent Partner. Whenever I heard Christmas carols, I registered it. But I've got no idea what was happening musically at all throughout.
Between the standards?
No.
That's too funny. Well, he's one of those with a ton of. Well, it's actually not too many credits in film, but he passed. There's still a couple of films that have come out that use his tracks. American Hustle and Black Mass in particular. He had some of his material in there, but he didn't do a whole lot.
No, I think his composing is relatively thin for films. But mostly it's just them using pieces of his.
And I think it looks like Silent Partner credits him as the theme composer. I guess that's what that means.
I guess so. I guess so. I mean, they didn't credit anyone else to do any of the other parts of music,
That's
so I was a
strange.
little confused by that. But he still got a Canadian Film Award for it.
What else did it do in Canada in terms of performance? Andy, you dug into it?
Well, I looked at the Canadian Film Awards to see kind of who won or what won, and this film ended up winning. It looked like it got 6 Canadian Film Awards, and I guess this was a time of, I don't know if it was turmoil or what for the Canadian Film Awards, but they were taken over after this year by the Academy of Canadian Cinema, and they became the Genies, which that's what I had always been familiar with from Canada. But this film won for Best Director, Best Feature Film, Best Film Editing, Best Music Score, Best Overall Sound, and Best Sound Editing. Now, looking at the winners, though, I was a little confused by their website because it has multiple winners. So to me, it looked like maybe they just, like, you all did a great job. I mean, they are Canadian after all. So.
That feels so wonderfully Canadian. Oh, that's awesome.
Here, you all take an award.
We were so taken by all your work, you all get awards.
I think that speaks to why they had to reshuffle things next year. Someone's come in and gone, hang on a sec, guys. You can't give all the nominees the award. It's not what's supposed to happen.
It's not much of an award anymore. Like, giving all the participants honorable mentions.
Oh, so funny.
How did it do in the box office, though? Did you get any numbers on that, or was that buried in the lore of Canadian accounting?
No, I found some information. I found information as to what it cost. I couldn't find anything as to how much it made. But it cost, and this was really tricky because it was Canadian dollars from 1978 that then I had to convert in 78 and figure out what it was today. But it was about 2.8 million US dollars in 1978, which is about 10 million for the adjusted budget that they spent to make this thing. So
it's a lot of money. I think
it was a decent amount.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious. I mean, I'm assuming that it was an actual location, so they probably spent a bit on getting the locations. And I mean, they brought Elliot Gould and Christopher Plummer up, so I don't know what their salaries were, but I'm guessing it was probably pretty handsome because they were, especially Elliot Gould. I mean, I know he had a string of flops before this, but I mean, he was a '70s guy. He was one of those big people that people saw everywhere in the '70s.
I should say, Elliot, I love him,
great.
But I've never understood people who refer to him as attractive or in love. I don't know. I'm not being cruel, but in this movie as well, there's a few moments where people say, "But you're so good looking," and I never get it and understand. I just think he's awesome, but not. There was a moment where I thought maybe they've miscast this because they keep referring to him as young and hot, and he's Elliot Gould. I don't know. I'm sorry. That sounds terrible.
Cool. But what's funny is I had that same feeling, and honestly, it was right up until he runs out. Like the phone rings, like the second time they're about to have their exchange between the phone, between Plummer and Gould, and he runs out on the street and shouts in the night. Right there's that big wide shot, and we get him under the spotlight in the middle of this wet street, screaming, "Where the hell are you?" And I thought, wow, that Elliot Gould just became like a dominating force in this. That's awesome. Look at him go. He went from being Elliot Gould to he's a man's man. He's a role model for others. So anyway, I think that transformation is really interesting and shows just how versatile he is. And he was. I feel like I need to go explore more of his early catalog because I immediately think like Ocean's 11. Like he's the funny kind of old rich guy, right? And
I've got a lot of VHS where he's on the cover with a woman, like a romantic lead, like lots. I can think of 3 different covers where he's like a love interest and a cool guy.
It's funny. My first knowledge of Elliot Gould was as a kid with, I think it was a movie called The Last Flight of Noah's Ark. that, it was like, he was Noah, and he was flying a ship full of like zoo animals or something with some kids, and they crash on an island, and they have to figure out how to turn the airplane into a boat to sail out.
Is this
the
a
island.
dream?
It was. I'm surprised you don't have this.
Somebody misread
one in your
the
VHS
source
collection.
material.
No,
Oh,
I
man.
loved it as a kid. I mean, it was like that perfect. It came out. There you go, 1980. So it was a perfect age for me to watch, like a kid's adventure, and it was a. I would love to see it now to see exactly if it's just a completely whacked out film or what, because it was. I don't know. I thought I had a great time. It was him, Genevieve Bujold, Ricky Schroeder.
What?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
way.
Rick,
I believe he
that's right.
prefers Rick now.
So yeah, gosh, I should rent that one. See if it's any good.
That's
Probably
good.
isn't.
Well, we're moving into our why people show up segment of the show, and so before we get into that and we actually get into the ranking, do we have any closing thoughts, any final lessons that we should take away from this film?
You can't trust anyone. That sounds ridiculous. But the 70s was a topsy-turvy time where, in horror, you could end a film where it was like, yeah, everything is bad. Like at the end of The Wicker Man. Sorry,
Right.
this will continue and you will just die. That is how we wrap this up. And in this world, where everyone is bad or it's kind of like the society is shifting and their morals are out the window and we're all trying to negate it together. But amongst that, there will be some blood. There will be some horribleness, and you're just going to have to resort to old school animalistic fighting back to survive. And that's what I take away from this film.
This was again, not having really ever heard of this film before. I had a great time watching it. I really enjoyed it. It was taut. It was interesting. It kept me surprised. I mean, it wasn't. I never really could tell where it was going to go. And I loved that 70s just vibe of the whole thing. It really was dark. But it also just like the story construction I thought was really well done. Something we didn't mention, but how Elliot Gould's father kind of figures in as just kind of this little subplot in his life. And you just kind of see this beautiful scene where he's at his father's nursing home as these kids are singing Christmas carols there. And it's just a touching little scene. And then next time we are involved with his father, it's at his father's funeral, and that's where he ends up meeting Elaine. But just a very simple way to kind of introduce the Elaine character was just having those couple scenes there. I loved the simplicity of it without having to go into a lot of exposition. It was a well-made film, very solid, and I had a great time watching it. This is definitely something I would check out again.
I love that you brought that up, the father's role, because isn't it so great that Elliot Gould's character takes such a turn for darkness after his father dies? Like with no longer with this sort of compass in his life, he's kind of awash on his own, and ends up making some very interesting choices. You wonder if he would have made those choices if he'd still had his father, if that was some sort of symbolic connection to goodness.
And
I thought
just
that was
you
really great.
saying that speaks to the writing and just showing you small pieces to give you all you need to know. Like you don't have to do it in a boring long scene where, Father, I'm going to miss you, and Father, I don't know how to live without you. Stuff. It's just him on Christmas, cut to funeral. It's great.
Very good, yeah.
Brilliant. All right, now, Andy, I think it's time for us to rank it. Craig, are you familiar with flickchart.com?
No.
Have you ever heard of Flickchart? Flickchart is a service. It's a web service. It's a website. It's fantastic. Let me start with that. But it often gives our guests no degree of apoplexy because of what it asks you to do. It is a ranking service. We have this list of all of our films, and you say, here's what we want to do. We want to go to flickchart.com. We want to log in with our account. We want to type in The Silent Partner, and it presents you The Silent Partner on one side and another completely random film from your list on the other. And as if you were on a deserted island with nothing but a TV and a VCR, you have to say which film you find better.
Oh, wow.
Between those two. We call this the Filmo a Filmo reckoning on flickchart.com.
That's great.
It is really terrific. It is and torturous. And so here we are. We offer this To you, it is the
Oh,
first
no.
of two of our ranking systems that we do on the show. Now, if there is a chance that you have not seen one of the films, I have a very difficult time believing that could happen. But if there's a chance you haven't seen it, don't worry about it. Andy and I will rank this next to that on our own, and we will continue to move forward. It only gives us about 8 or 10 films to rank.
Excellent.
And then we'll be finished. So here we go, Andy.
First up, we have The Silent Partner, or John Ford's Stagecoach, 1939. I am definitely Silent Partner on this one.
Yeah.
We just talked about
Definitely
we just did a 1939 series and talked about Stagecoach, and it was okay,
tough.
but yeah,
That
it
was
didn't,
tough.
Didn't wow me. What about you, Craig?
No, I think I saw it when I was very young, and I have that young person, like a kid thing, where you're like, I don't want to watch this. Why isn't the cartoons on? So that's my bad attitude about. I'm sorry. I should watch it again first, but
no, we just saw Stagecoach and have that exact thing, and we're like in our 40s now. So
all right, next up, this is tougher: The Silent Partner or Boogie Nights.
Oh, this is tougher for me too.
if I'm alone on a desert island, I think that is of its time. It's not trying to throw back. Like Boogie Nights is 90s view of the 70s, whereas I would rather see the original thing, the 70s thing. I mean, I love Boogie Nights. It's such a great film, but it would be weird to see if maybe I'm taking this too serious.
You only had those two choices.
I think it's...
Is that? I don't think
authentic.
that's possible to take it too seriously.
Like that. This one's authentic. Boogie Nights is a wink, wink. This occurred before. And he's a very
it's like a caricature of itself.
Display of that period of time and stuff, but it's not... I'm going to go for the authentic thing.
I'm going to say Silent Partner too, actually, Pete.
Wow.
That actually resonated with me quite a bit, what you just said. And also, I think, looking at the two of them, if I had them on the shelf, I just feel like Silent Partner, I think, is going to be a much easier watch, despite some of the intense violence in that one. But I think I would probably pick the Silent Partner. So that's me, Pete.
Well, then my vote doesn't matter, and so I can.
You still can't.
I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go with Silent Partner too. But I just want, for the record, I feel really bad about it.
Hey, Boogie Nights is great.
Like it is a genuinely difficult choice for me. Genuinely difficult. It resonates with me too, that the idea that Boogie Nights is a character choice. It's a satire of an experience, of a time, and of an experience. And but the fact is, I don't have a lot of Wahlberg films that I like, and this one I really like a lot. And so I what breaks my heart is a little bit is that I sometimes like to just give it to him. Just guys, you go Wahlberg. This was the one. So anyway,
So Silent Partner takes that one.
Next?
We got Silent Partner or National Lampoon's Vacation.
Silent Partner. Don't even need to finish it.
I'm Vacation.
All right.
For the same...
Sorry.
Vacation is so boring now. Have you watched it recently?
Yes, with you, and I loved it.
It's like an hour and a half movie that takes 10 hours to get through the funny parts.
No,
That's brilliant.
The only reason I'm going for Vacation is for the same authenticness. The opening sequence of Vacation with those postcards, that whole 80s stuff, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the
songs all through it are great. Like, it's just an anthropological study because they travel from state through state. They go through a lot of exciting things.
The way you're selling it, though, it sounds like it should be a documentary, and it is a lousy documentary. It should be in the special features section.
I think it is a good documentary. I think comedy often shows you what's going on in the world at that time. And if it's not funny, I don't care. Maybe I'll laugh 3 times throughout, but I'm happy to see it through that lens of, well, look, we're in this area and this is what happens in this area.
All right.
Whereas Silent Partner's a bit too insular in its small place. Oh, is that terrible?
All right.
I'm sorry.
All right. Hey, I doff my hat to you both. You have won yet again.
I feel like this is not film versus film. It's us versus you.
It's us versus me. That's exactly what it is.
Well, next up we have The Silent Partner or The Descent. Fun little horror film.
Oh.
Boy.
We are fans of The Descent around these parts.
I am a big fan.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. I think I'm going to have to go with The Descent.
I am too.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Hey, we got a unanimous vote. The Silent
Redemption.
Partner or Shaun of the Dead?
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead?
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead.
All right.
Dare I ask, what did you think we said?
Dawn of
is
the
there
Dead.
Another,
I didn't.
Dawn of the Dead. Yeah, we've done that too.
There's also
Mom of the Dead. What?
There is also Juan of the Dead. I have yet to see Juan of the Dead.
Vaughn of the Dead.
Vaughn?
No,
I thought you said Bourne, like it was
Juan
a
of the
weird
Dead.
mashup of the Bourne films in a zombie apocalypse.
I would see that film.
That'd be great.
I'd like to pitch it just for the story I
Yeah,
can tell
right?
people. Yeah.
All right, we've got The Silent Partner or Out of the Past. Great little noir.
I haven't seen Out of the Past.
Oh, you need to.
You need to. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Rock solid film noir stuff.
Yeah,
There you
it
go.
is rock solid. Where
Robert
do you put
Mitchum,
that,
Jane
Andy?
Greer. I'm going to go with Out of the Past.
I think I am too. I think that's kind of an easy choice.
Yeah, that's one of the top-notch noirs
Yeah.
out there. Next up, The Silent Partner or The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
I'm straight to Silent Partner. Sorry.
I'm Silent Partner.
I am Silent Partner too.
What do you think? I'm just not a fan of that film of Benjamin Button.
I actually
Just
really
don't
like
get
that
it.
film, but it's a long film and it's just not something I feel like I probably will put on that much. I would feel like The Silent Partner just is going to be a breeze to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More comedy for you, Craig. The Silent Partner or Caddyshack?
Oh.
I liked a lot of Caddyshack, but I didn't like the whole catty part of the story.
I agree.
I feel like The Silent Partner is the more just a film that's stronger as a whole. That's my vote.
I'm with you. I like Silent Partner better than Caddyshack, and I would watch that before I'd watch Caddyshack ever again. That sounds terrible. I don't understand the appeal of Caddyshack.
But looking at it from an anthropological point of view.
Yes, it's a documentary about the golfing habits
Oh no, it's ridiculous. It's
of the wealthy suburban teen crowd. Midwestern American teens.
It's not for me.
No,
All right.
I'm not a huge fan of that one either. So, Pete, what was yours?
Silent Partner. Now out of shame.
No, you can say Caddyshack just if you wanted to.
And, no, I would also. We just did Caddyshack again, and I am a big fan of Caddyshack, but as we watch it again, and Andy, he shamed me into waking up and realizing there are problems with it. There are some problems with it.
There are problems with that, yes. Well, that leaves The Silent Partner at number 56 on our list, smack dab between Out of the Past and Caddyshack. So I think that's a good place for it. 56 out of 200 some? Yeah, that's pretty high up there.
That is pretty high up there. It feels like a good place for it. But what does it do for our star rating? Now, this is our second ranking where we have our partner account on letterboxd.com where we supply stars. So on a 5-star scale, where would you put this one? This one should be easy.
It should be easy?
Yeah. Right in the heart.
I don't know.
It's a 4-star for me.
Yeah, it's a solid 4-star.
Yes, okay. I didn't want to say it first, but that's where I've ranked it on IMDb. That's what I've given it 8 out of 10. So yeah, great.
All right,
Excellent,
perfect.
excellent. Yeah, you came on saying, it's not my favorite films, but I'm like, I thought it was great.
I know. I was like, what are you doing?
Well, I was hesitant. I didn't know if you guys hated it.
Don't feel any shame. It was fantastic.
Oh, good.
This was like an easy watch and definitely something I will come back to. So I'm really excited that you brought this one to us.
Oh,
and believe me, we say this every time. We are nervous about the day when our guest comes on and brings us a really crappy movie. we don't have that problem yet. This was really this was a terrific watch, and I think it comes with our highest seal of recommendation. Go see this movie if you haven't seen it. It's great.
I give it a full fist.
No, that makes no sense. If no one knows what
I know, but
the history.
See, what you don't realize is our show notes are just going to be populated with links to all of the YouTube videos.
Oh, okay. All right, well,
from
good.
The archive, the Full Fist archive. Brilliant catalog.
It is great stuff. Well, Craig, thanks so much for coming on the show. If people want to find you and strike up a conversation with you, how would they go about tracking you down? Or maybe start following you on Instagram so they can check out all these wonderful VHS tapes of yours.
I would do that. I don't say this much to talk about with me, but go to Instagram, Craig Anderson _VHS, and you can watch what I post 1 or 2 videos a day from my collection. and it's great. It resonates with people. Like people will see something they haven't seen in 20 years and go, "Oh my God, I forgot that existed," which is great.
Now, do you have to travel with VHS tapes just so you have them ready to put on Instagram?
I have a big warehouse in Sydney, but what I do when I travel is come back with tapes from everywhere I go around the world. I go to op shops.
It's like the Raiders warehouse, right? I mean, you just have this giant crates.
Well, there's a lot of excellent stories of things hidden in tapes or footage hidden on tapes, and I think out of the 10,000 I have, there's probably something weird amongst it. There's a collector in Australia that's hit up all the collectors, this nut job, who's after a copy of Ken Russell's Gothics. But amongst all the eBay sellers, we've chatted and said, well, hang on, we've sold him more than 100 copies of that tape. So everyone's trying to work out what does he want with his tape. And the best theory is he's done something like shot the video of him killing someone or burying something or something hideous on one of these tapes, and it's been taken to a thrift store or back to the video store. And now his whole mission is to find the copy of Ken Russell's Gothic to erase it, to get rid of what he's put on it.
That's the story that needs to be told. That's the documentary, Craig.
Yeah. It's true.
That is awesome.
We thought of having a trap and having a knife.
A honeypot.
Yeah, it's a thing where at our warehouse, we'd put a thing saying, screening 4 copies of Ken Russell's Gothic from video live at the same time on 4 different screens. And he would have to come because if the thing appears, he's going down. So we'd trap him by coming to the screening of the Ken Russell tape, the Gothic tape. Yeah.
That is dark.
My God.
So good.
So funny. Well, you have to promise if we ever make it out there that you've got to take us to your warehouse so we can check all this out,
absolutely. You can stay at the warehouse. It's like living in a video store. Yeah.
You're quite the host. Come to Australia. We'll put you up in my warehouse of VHS tapes.
I live in the warehouse too. I have a room and there's an awesome lounge suite and neon like it's the 80s and all the tapes are in genres so you can walk around. It's just like a video store. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much again for joining us in the Next Reel Speakeasy,
awesome.
Craig.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Much fun.
I'm very glad you enjoyed it. That's great.
And for all of you out there, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you've heard, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, Pinterest, Letterboxd, Flickchart, and now YouTube. And don't forget to head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and comment. It really does help more people find us. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, I've got to go check my safety deposit box.
I'm gonna use you to be my friend.
I love having these wonderful chats on movies we like with all these industry guests talking about some of their favorite movies.
So many great conversations on that show about so many great movies.
We have so much fun having these conversations, but producing the show week after week does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these incredible conversations.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material for all the adapted film discussions on the Next Reel's family of podcasts. Purchasing through our links supports the show.
It's your one-stop shop for Amazon and Apple links where you can buy your copy of the original source material.
Original material for movies we like, movies like Casino Royale,
The Silent Partner,
Never Let Me Go,
Silver Linings Playbook,
There Will Be Blood, based on Upton Sinclair's Oil.
I believe it's Oil!
Oh yeah, I forgot the exclamation point.
Plus, by using those links to buy your next read, Apple and Amazon show us a little bit of love, which allows you to support our family of shows with minimal effort.
thenextreel.com/originals. It's a great way to support the show and find your next page turner.
That's right. Head over to thenextreel.com/originals to pick out your next read and dig in today.